It was a big weekend in the football scape for fans across the state of Michigan, around the country, and around the world rooting for the Detroit Lions. That began late last week on Friday, after our show on Friday, the West Bloomfield School District posting these pictures of students throughout the school district showing their support, including over at West Bloomfield Middle School, making special signs, dressed in Lions gear and Lions colors all throughout the day to cheer on their favorite football team outside of course, the West Bloomfield High School Lakers they cheer for all throughout the fall season. The Lions took on the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC title game last evening in San Francisco at Levi's Stadium. An unfortunate result as the Lions had a big lead at the half, dropping a 17-point lead to ultimately be defeated by the 49ers 31-34, and then ending, of course, their campaign to potentially play and win a Super Bowl in this season. Here to join us to talk about the Lions and some other recent news in football that has relations to our community right here in the greater West Bloomfield area is the head coach of the West Bloomfield Lakers varsity football team, Zach Hilbers. Coach, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on. It's a good morning, as always, here in the greater West Bloomfield area. Could have been better if we had a Lions victory to kick off this morning, but there's so many similarities, I think, between this Lions team in their regular season and postseason and the way the Lakers played this season as well for your squad, because there was always going to be those expectations of success coming into this season for both of these teams. It didn't end the way that you would hope that it did. So if you're Dan Campbell in this situation, being that you are a head coach, what are those first things you're maybe saying to the guys in the locker room after a loss like that ends a season like this?
I mean, man, when you're in the moment, you just try your best to hold it together. And that's one of the things I respect about Coach Campbell so much, that he's such a genuine guy. Listen to his press conferences. I mean, he just owned everything, was just himself from, day one that you saw years ago when, I guess they were on Hard Knocks, and every day through that. So you just got to be yourself. And he's always a heart on the sleeve type of guy. And, you can tell he still was. And, I mean, I feel for him and all those guys because, we were all so proud of him as a community. It was such a great run, and to be that close, it's tough.
And from an X's and O's standpoint, there's so many questions about the Lions' decision-making, Dan Campbell's decision-making in that game, and how that may have impacted what was ultimately a 3-point game at the final result. But at the same time, this is a San Francisco 49ers team that was 12-5 coming into this game. They were the number one seed in the NFC for a reason, and they made some serious adjustments themselves at halftime. So from a coach's standpoint, from a guy that is, so to speak, an expert in football, now, what did you see differently in the second half for the 49ers and from the Lions that may have also had a big impact on that game's result?
Well, thanks. I don't know if I'm quite the expert any of those guys are, but I guess I dabble in those situations a little bit with, the job here. I was honestly, it's been a lot of talk between last night and even this morning with the kids here in school. Would you have done this? Would you have done that? Like, I would have done everything, and it's easy when something doesn't go your way or the ball bounces the other way to say, like, well, you could have done this or that. Yeah, you're right. You could have in hindsight, but, in the moment, he did everything, I guess, that I was saying and yelling at the TV, like he did it. And it's just, that's Coach Campbell, I guess. And, it didn't work out. It's tough for fans because that's the toughest thing for me is I try to watch the game as a football coach, but I'm a big Lions fan. I have been my whole life. You get so emotionally invested and attached. It's hard to admit that sometimes at some point the ball has to bounce your way. So, you think about like the long pass downfield that bounced off the face mask and Ayuk made a diving catch at like the 1 or the 2 yard line. It's an incredible play. And if you talk about an oblong ball, the football, oblong, not round, thrown 50 yards down the field, hitting someone's round face mask, it can bounce in any direction, right? And it popped back up. Their guy made a great play. And, that's just, I guess, one example of going into detail about, the bounces and the breaks that can go your way or go against you. And it's your job as a football coach and a football team that, when those things happen to respond and, put yourself in the best situation you can. And they had some tough breaks. Some of them self-imposed maybe, but they had some tough breaks that whole second half. And like you said, San Francisco's a really good team. That's what happens when you play good teams.
Zach Hilbers is with us on the Splash Live, head coach of the West Bloomfield Lakers varsity football team, a team that, much like the Lions, got right on the doorstep of playing for a championship. Got right there. It was a very close game. It came down to the wire, much like this game on Sunday did for the Lions on the road against the 49ers. And so giving us some insight into what may have been in the thoughts of the coaching staff and those players. And as a guy that played ball all the way through high school, who's been coaching high school ball for a number of years and had some of those similar situations yourself this season, as things are starting to not go your way, as the luck is starting to go in the favor of the other team. Your guys are making some mistakes that are causing some self-inflicted wounds and keeping your team out of that game, or giving opportunities to the other. How do you make those adjustments in the game, and what conversations are you having, or are your coaches having on the sideline with players in those situations? Because whether it's college, whether it's NFL, whether it's high school or any other level of football, these are very similar situations that are really common.
Yeah, and I mean, it might sound cliche, but that's why it's so important to practice like high leverage situations as much as you can. So like when you get in the moment, been there before. And you're never going to be able to duplicate, an NFC championship game situation where the momentum was all yours and it seems to be going the other way. But, that's why I guess football and other coaches, and not just athletics, but, across a broad spectrum of careers, it's so important to be, I guess, focused and mentally tough, because things aren't always going to go your way. And how you respond when things are kind of stacked against you, it seems like, can tell a lot between winning and losing. Conversation we had with the kids after, we lost the doorstep in the semifinals was that, the margins sometimes between success and failure are razor thin. And when that's the case and when that's the truth, it's your job as an individual, as a team, as a unit to kind of move the needle your direction. Sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it doesn't.
We're joined by Zach Hilbers. He is the head coach of the West Bloomfield Lakers varsity football team, joining us on the Splash Live, talking about the Lions and some other big news in the football landscape in our state over the last week or so has been the exit of Jim Harbaugh as the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines football team at the college level, just after winning a national championship just a couple weeks ago. And now they have a new head coach in place. Their offensive coordinator, Sherrone Moore, has been promoted to the head coach position. And it's tough to think about West Bloomfield football without the connection it has to Michigan football, of course, with Donovan Edwards, with Makari Page, with Amir Herring currently on those teams, and so many connections. Ron Bellamy, the wide receivers coach. But now with Sherrone Moore being promoted to head coach, it kind of brings those similarities to your situation at West Bloomfield High School, and even to your predecessor Tyrese Grice's situation of keeping that coaching staff intact as much as possible, having that familiarity in the locker room. What benefit does it bring to Michigan's football program to keep a guy like Sherrone Moore there as their head coach after a big exit of Jim Harbaugh and others like their defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter?
I mean, I think it's invaluable to them as a program because, obviously Coach Harbaugh, phenomenal coach, success at every level he's been at. But it gives them some sort of stability that so many programs, we'll find out what happens with schools like Alabama and some other places that lose, I guess, like a stalwart, type head coach, and they just went a different direction, went outside. Hopefully Michigan can benefit from, like I said, the continuity and familiarity. And you do have to do things your own way. You can't just step in and say, well, this is the way we've always done things, and this is how we're going to continue to do things, because you do have to be yourself. I know, Coach Moore doesn't need to listen to my advice on that. He'll, figure that out, knows that on his own. But at the same time, the kids are hearing a familiar voice and familiar structure. And you got to put your own twist on it and do it your way. But I think the continuity is so hard in this business. And anytime you can, a continuity of like a football staff, anytime you can, I guess, maintain any semblance of that, it helps quite a bit.
It helps to have guys returning from the previous regime that were critical players on your national championship team, guys like Donovan Edwards and like Makari Page, who both announced recently on their social media they will be coming back. Donovan for another season, and Makari Page for his fifth season at the University of Michigan. Those are two key additions, and that West Bloomfield connection's having an even stronger impact as the years go on at the University of Michigan for a team that just won a national championship. That's going to go through its own sort of growing pains and a transition from one head coaching regime to another, despite the similarities. What can guys like Donovan and guys like Makari Page with that veteran experience bring to this national championship team as they try to go back to back?
Yeah, and Samaj Morgan as a freshman got some experience too, which is pretty valuable, I think, for him, because I think if I remember right, the receiver room at least had a few seniors or upperclassmen that are at least moving on. So having him get that experience on the field will, hopefully kind of give him a jump start to next year as well. But like I guess you asked about the other two, like they seem like veterans. It's crazy to me since I've known them since like they were little kids, and in a lot of ways, I still think they're little kids, even though they're not. They're, pretty big, grown men out there playing a tough game. But, just the experience they bring and the wealth of knowledge, whether it's the situations that you brought up earlier or just, I guess, the process of, the work that it takes to be successful. Even if you have a coach that's been the new head coach, Sherrone Moore, that's been there, you have to rely on your upperclassmen and your veteran players. I had to last year with, my senior class with Jameer Benjamin, Brandon Davis-Swain, Kari Jackson. You can go down the list, and Montel Johnson, all these guys that were, huge for me as a coach that, went in every day, worked hard, did things the right way, and it just helps bridge that gap. So, hopefully Makari and Donovan and the other veteran players, same thing for Coach Moore.
Well, Coach, hopefully we will be seeing more of that from the University of Michigan with these critical players from West Bloomfield, including guys like Samaj Morgan, who will have, as you said, a bigger role you'd expect next year in Coach Bellamy's wide receiver room, and even Amir Herring with some of their losses on the offensive line. We could see him also get some action next year in the next couple of years and be a really big player in Ann Arbor. Whether it's the Lions or it's the Michigan Wolverines or it's the West Bloomfield Lakers, football always important to our communities. And just to tie this back to the Lions and their loss last night, but their performance throughout the season, just how much can a game like football galvanize a community?
Yeah, I think quite a bit. I'm pretty biased because I even tell the kids and like our coaching staff here that like we should all understand that like we probably care about football way too much, like as a group. But I still also believe that it can do so many cool things for you in life, teach you so many important lessons. And you kind of saw it like you mentioned about the community, whether it's like the cool drone shows they're doing or just the general morale that's been around the city for the last few months. And they just, like I said, they did an incredible job. I got so much respect for Coach Campbell and everybody else there. Because, like I said, it's genuine too. At least I think you can tell when the guy talks, like it's everything he says. At least as fans, it makes him an easy guy to pull for.
Zach, we appreciate you joining us today and for your insight on some big football news of late, not only in our community but throughout the state of Michigan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.